Alright, so picture this. My life, total wreck. A year ago, everything just flipped upside down. I'm still trying to make sense of it. I never imagined I'd be sitting here, pouring my heart out to the internet. But here we are. When your own family turns their back on you over a lie, sometimes the only place left to speak is a Reddit post. Let me take you back to where it all began, because this story, it's the kind that makes people shake their heads and say, no way, that actually happened. So, there's my buddy Dave. We've been tight since forever. Grew up on the same street, played ball, shared late night snacks. His sister, Jenny, I knew her too, always a little different, quiet, offbeat. I won't pretend I knew the full story, but everyone around us sort of understood she had her own battles, mental health stuff. Dave didn't really talk about it, and I never asked. Fast forward to last year, Jenny suddenly hits me up, says she's pregnant, and my first thought, okay, congrats. But then she drops the bomb. It's yours. My entire brain just short-circuited. I was like, what? Let me be very clear. I've never been with Jenny, never kissed her, never even hugged her. We were barely even friends. So to hear her accuse me of being the father, it was like being shoved into a nightmare with no exit. I told her straight up, Jenny, this never happened, but she wouldn't back down. She just kept repeating it like if she said it enough, it had somehow become true. It didn't make any sense. I tried to stay calm, thinking maybe this was part of whatever she was going through mentally, but inside, I was panicking. Then came the real kicker. She refused to take a paternity test. Just flat out said no. And I'm standing there, thinking, if you're so sure, why not prove it? But she kept dodging it. Instead, she guilt-tripped me hard. You're abandoning us. Your child needs you, and all that. I told her if she wouldn't take the test, I wasn't signing anything. I wasn't about to chain my life to a child that wasn't mine, based on a lie. That should have been the end of it, right? But no, it was just the beginning. Next thing I know, my parents find out, and that's when the floor drops out. Now, I love my parents, but they're old school, traditional to the bone. And the second they hear I supposedly got Jenny pregnant, they flip. Full meltdown, deadbeat, liar, disgrace. They hurled every label they could find. I kept trying to explain, Mom, Dad, I didn't do this. Jenny's lying, but it didn't matter. The truth didn't matter. In their eyes, I was guilty. We fought like really fought, the kind of fights where stuff gets said that you don't come back from. They told me I was running from responsibility, that they didn't raise a coward. I even pointed out that I wasn't even in the same state when Jenny would have conceived. I had proof, dates, alibis, but they just waved it off. People make mistakes, they said. Yeah, except this wasn't some little slip-up. This was a full-blown lie that could ruin my life, and ruin it did. 6 months into Jenny's pregnancy, I was public enemy number one in my own family. Every call, every text, every awkward dinnerette was all about me being a failure. Even some of my friends started doubting me. Are you sure, man? Maybe you forgot something. Yeah, like I'd forget creating a whole human being. Then my parents dropped the bombshell. If I didn't step up and play dad, they were cutting me off. No contact, no holidays, no family. I didn't believe them at first, until they did it. They threw me out of their lives like I was nothing. The kid they raised, gone, replaced by whatever image Jenny sold them. It wrecked me. But the story doesn't end there. After the baby was born, I find out through someone else, not even from them, that my mom had been at the hospital, holding the baby, beaming like a proud grandma. Meanwhile, I was completely erased from their world. So, I did the only thing I could. I got a lawyer, took the case to court, forced a paternity test, and when that envelope came, 0%, not my child, not even close. I held that paper in my hands, and I swear, it felt like both justice and betrayal, relief but also pure rage. I sent it to my parents, hoping, no begging, that this would finally break the fog, that they'd see they were wrong, that they'd apologize. But they didn't. Instead, they blew up my phone again, because sometimes, even the truth isn't enough when people are too deep in their own delusions. After the truth came out, you'd think everything would go back to normal, right? Like boom, paternity test says 0%, not the dad, case closed. But nope, that's not how this story goes. Instead, my phone started lighting up with missed calls, teary voicemails, and desperate texts. Apologies, promises, offers money. Even my dad, out of nowhere, mails me a couple $100. Like that would patch the gaping wound they left behind, and yeah, I cashed the check. Not gonna lie, it felt like the bare minimum after everything they put me through. But forgive them, not even close. See, when people show you how easily they can cut you out, you don't forget it. I made it clear, if they could turn their backs on me over a lie, I wasn't going to risk opening that door again, no matter how many casserole dinners or guilt-laced phone calls came with it. Some of my friends, even my therapist, started floating that familiar line, they're your parents, maybe give them another chance. And I get it, I really do. But how do you trust people who didn't even hesitate before throwing you to the wolves? who believed a rumor over their own son. That's what I wrestle with now, this tug-of-war between knowing I did nothing wrong and wondering if it's even worth trying to rebuild something so broken. And just when I thought it couldn't get worse, Jenny went nuclear. She started telling people I faked the paternity test, that I somehow tampered with DNA results like I was some evil genius with lab access and a revenge plan. It didn't make any sense, but in a small town, logic doesn't stand a chance against gossip. Suddenly, I was getting side eyes at the grocery store, whispered about in line at the bank. Some people even had the audacity to confront me, like I owed them an explanation. I had proof in my hands, literal science, but Jenny's version of the story was louder, messier, more entertaining. Meanwhile, my parents kept calling, acting like nothing happened. My mom would leave long, emotional voicemails about missing her baby and wanting the family back together, but never once did she say sorry, not even a hint of we were wrong. She invited me over for dinner, like that would magically reset everything. But it didn't feel like love, it felt like damage control. And then came the cherry on top. My dad tried to bribe me back, sent an email offering to buy me a new car if I'd just come home. A car, like my forgiveness had a price tag. I didn't even reply, because, by then, I knew, they didn't want to make it right. They just wanted things to look right again. Jenny, of course, wasn't done. She started reaching out to people from my past, digging up anyone who might listen. She even messaged my ex, Samantha, spinning some tale about how I abandoned her and the baby. Sam texted me out of the blue, saying, "We need to talk." That was the moment I broke. I called Jenny and told her to stop. Just stop. I was done. With her lies, with her games. With all of it. She laughed and hung up. And in that moment, I realized something that changed everything. I was completely alone in this. Sure, my closest friends were still in my corner, but no one really knew how deep the hurt went. I couldn't keep doing it waiting for the next grenade to land in my lap. So I made a choice. I cut them all off. Jenny, my parents, even Dave, her brother, my friend, because being near that family was like standing in a fire, hoping not to get burned. I wrote my parents a long email, no sugarcoating, no holding back. I told them exactly how I felt, how they failed me when I needed them most, how they lost my trust, how I didn't know if I'd ever be ready to forgive, and if they wanted even the chance to fix things, it had to start with real accountability. No more pretending. No more sweeping things under the rug. As for Jenny, I blocked her on everything. She wasn't my problem anymore, and for the first time in a long time, I could breathe. It's been a few months now, and yeah, it still hurts. There are days when guilt sneaks in where I question if I did the right thing. But then I remember all the lies, all the betrayal, and I know, walking away wasn't weakness, it was survival. And I don't regret it. You know how you think once you cut toxic people out, the storm will settle and peace will finally follow. Yeah, not even close. At first, I thought walking away from Jenny and going no contact with my parents would be the end of the chaos. Like finally I've drawn the line. Let the healing begin. But instead, it was like lighting a fuse I didn't know was there. The silence didn't mean calm. It meant something was building. A few weeks after I sent that final email, I get a random message from this guy Mike, an old high school friend I hadn't heard from in years. We weren't even that close back then, so I was already suspicious. Then he hits me with it. "Hey, just checking in. Your parents reached out to me." That was the moment my stomach dropped. Turns out my parents were going behind my back, contacting anyone who ever knew me, spinning this narrative that I was spiraling, that I was unstable, broken, lost. They were on a mission, not to make amends, but to make me look like the one who needed fixing. And Mike, he saw right through it. He wanted to give me a heads up, but he was just the beginning. Over the next few days, it was like opening a floodgate. Old classmates, distant cousins, people I hadn't spoken to in years, all suddenly sliding into my inbox with concerned texts. "Hey, your parents are really worried about you." Worried? No, this wasn't love. This was damage control. Started a full-on PR campaign to make themselves look like the heartbroken, well-meaning parents and me, the troubled, ungrateful son. I was stunned. I'd stepped away to protect myself, and they used that silence to paint me as the villain in their carefully rehearsed story. But nothing, and I mean nothing, prepared me for what came next. They called my boss. Yay. My actual workplace. Somehow, they got his number and called the office, telling him they were worried about my mental health. I wish I were making this up. One day, I get pulled into my manager's office and he's got this look, half concerned. Half what the hell is going on? He asks me, "Is everything okay at home?" And I just froze. There's no handbook for that moment. I had to explain everything, how my parents had crossed the line from worried to manipulative. Thankfully, he believed me. He was understanding, even apologized for having to ask. But the damage, it was done. My own parents had invaded the one space I thought was still safe, my job. That was the last straw. I contacted a lawyer and started the process of getting a restraining order. I didn't want to. It felt extreme. But what choice did I have? They were dragging my name through the mud. messing with my peace, and now my career. If that's not enough to draw the line, what is? The process was brutal paperwork, court, dates, the weight of it all sitting on my chest every day. But for the first time in months, I felt something new. Control. I wasn't just surviving anymore, I was setting boundaries they couldn't ignore. And of course, once they found out, everything exploded. My mom sent this long emotional email full of guilt, saying things like I never thought my own son would do this and family is supposed to stick together. She said I was the one tearing the family apart. Not once did she take responsibility. Not once did she say sorry. Just more manipulation wrapped in sentiment. I didn't reply. Wanted to believe that was the worst of it, but life had one more punch to throw. I came home from work one evening, and there it was. Someone had keyed the word LIAR into the side of my car. Deep, deliberate, personal. I never got proof it was them. But let's be honest, who else would do something like that? No one else even knew about the restraining order, except a handful of trusted people. The motive was clear. They couldn't control the narrative anymore. So they lashed out the only way they knew how, by trying to scare me back into submission. I filed a police report. Nothing came of it. Just like that. The damage stayed scratched into metal, etched into memory. And that's when it really hit me. Sometimes the people who are supposed to protect you are the ones you need protection from. After that, I stopped taking chances. I started parking my car at a friend's place just to be safe. Paranoia wasn't a choice anymore, it was survival. I even installed cameras around my apartment, half hoping I was overreacting, but deep down knowing I wasn't. Every creak in the hallway, every knock at the door, it all felt like a warning. I was living in a state of high alert, constantly bracing for the next hit. But eventually, the storm settled. The restraining order finally went through. And with that, came a little peace. My parents were now legally banned from coming near me, my home, my workplace, my life. It was like someone had lifted a boulder off my chest. For the first time in what felt like forever, I could actually breathe. It's been a few months since I'm still picking up the pieces, trying to rebuild what their chaos left behind. I had to sit down with friends, with coworkers, explain everything. One awkward, painful conversation at a time. Most people were kind, supportive, but a few, they didn't buy it. Are you sure your parents would really go that far? Yeah, I get why it's hard to believe, but once you've lived it once, you've seen how far people will go just to stay in control. It changes the way you see everything. Looking back now, I never thought it would come to this. I mean, how does a family implode like that? How do the people who raised you become the ones trying to ruin you? Just because you set a boundary. But here's what I've learned. You don't owe anyone, not even your parents, control over your life. Sometimes the hardest, most painful thing you can do is walk away. But sometimes, it's also the only thing. I don't know what the future holds. Maybe one day they'll understand. Maybe they'll even apologize. But I'm not waiting around for that anymore. I'm done letting their damage define me. I've got a life to live, my own life, and I'm not looking back. Still, even now, the anger creeps in. I wasn't just hurt, I was furious. Not just at them, but at how everything got twisted. No matter how much I tried to protect myself, they always found a way to flip the story. Suddenly, I was the bad guy. I was the villain. And how do you explain to someone who's only hearing one side that your own parents are suing you for emotional distress because you told them no? Eventually, I had to go darker. I cut off more people, blocked family, wiped social media, not because I didn't care, but because I couldn't keep explaining myself to people who didn't want to understand. It was exhausting. I was done begging people to see the bigger picture. Then came the court date. I showed up with my lawyer, ready for whatever performance they had planned. And oh, they brought the drama. Tears, half-truths. This glossy version of our past, where they were the loving, devoted parents, and I was the cold, ungrateful son who ghosted them for no reason. They painted themselves as victims flawlessly, but my lawyer, she didn't flinch. She dismantled their story like it was made of paper. One by one, she laid everything out there. Harassment, the restraining order, even the paternity test. You could see it in the judge's eyes. They weren't buying it.